I know you're gonna dig this.
Hi, this is Stan the Man Brooks, host of Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. And now, in the studios live today, all the way from Paris, France, Gary Mudbone Cooper, original member and co-founder of Bootsy's Rubber Band. Gary, what's happening, man?
Oh, Stan, I'm glad to be here and be in the funky town of Dayton, Ohio.
Hey, and this is where the funk is.
Yes, it is.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it is.
Man, I am so happy that you had time to make it up here to Dayton. I know right now you're kind of being overseas a lot, but let's just get right to it, man. Tell everybody about Mr. Mudbone. Tell it. People always can remember back in the 70s when the funk was heavy, and definitely with Bootsy. But man, how did y'all hook up? That's my biggest question right now.
Well, I'm originally born in Washington, D.C. and grew up in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And back in the late 60s, I would say like 69, Funkadelic, they would come through. This was before me becoming associated with them. Mm-hmm. They would come through town. I ended up meeting them, like as a fan or support person when they came in, you need this, you need that, whatever. And I think in '72, one of the group members came over to my parents' house and heard some music that I was playing in the back. And he said, "Who is that?" So that's some stuff I'm working on. And he went back and told George. He said, "Hey man, that guy Gary Cooper, man, he be doing some music." So long story short, Stan, in 1973, I got a call from Bootsy. Mm-hmm. And I packed up my bags, went to Cincinnati, Ohio, stayed with Bootsy and his mother and sister and everything in Cincinnati on Kemper Lane, and we began to collaborate, writing together. And one of the first things that we did in demo form was "I'd Rather Be With You." That was my first collaboration with Bootsy and George Clinton. I say Bootsy first because we started and then was presenting it to George, along with three other songs. And we got picked up, by Warner Brothers, and then the story of funk began as Bootsy's Rubber Band, While we was doing that, at the same time, I had the privilege, because George Clinton helped us to get our deal, I had the privilege of also recording with Parliament and Funkadelic simultaneously as we was doing our first album called Stretching Out in the Rubber Band. My first endeavor with George Clinton was the Chocolate City album.
Oh, that was one.
Yes,
that was bad.
Yeah, Chocolate City.
I still smell that today. Man. It was just that funk.
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, it is just one. And now, tell us a little bit about what instruments you play. Did you do more co-writing? Give me a little more information.
I'm mainly a vocalist.
Okay.
Right. But it's funny because when George Clinton came to visit me at my parents' home, we're sitting around having fun, and I'm just tapping on the table and on my legs, and he said to me, "Why don't you play drums?" And I looked at him. I said, "You got to be joking, man. I never touched a set of drums in my life." He said, "Well, that beat that you're playing like that on the table on your legs," he said, "Man, he said, why don't you try that on drums?" So he convinced me to try drums, and the first record that I ever played drums on was "Make My Funk the P-Funk."
Yeah.
I wants to get funked up.
Yes.
That's my first drum and backing vocal track that I did with George. And then from that I did quite a few songs on drums. I mean, with Bootsy I did like "What's a Telephone Bill" and quite a few others with Bootsy. I did "Night of the Thumposaurus People" with Gaga Googa, Gaga Googa,
Man.
Aqua Boogie. I did Aqua Boogie on drums. I did Atomic Dog on drums. So it's funny because I would have never considered touching the drums if it hadn't have been for George Clinton. He had the tendency of seeing things about people and their potentials that sometimes you might not recognize yourself, and I still give him credit for that today.
Well, I don't know if you know it, but I'm a drummer myself, man.
Okay.
And just to know that someone gave you that opportunity and you took it and flew with it, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great, man.
Yeah.
But as you know, we're here also here in Dayton, Ohio, and we are so energized to come up with all of our funk artists to let them know about this funk museum that we're putting together here in Dayton, Ohio. And I know you've heard a lot about it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I'm just excited to see that even any of the members of the Parliament-Funkadelic, because you can't talk funk without Parliament-Funkadelic and Bootsy's Rubber Band. You just can't talk funk without that.
Yeah.
And just give me a little input on what do you think about it, maybe some ways that you could help get this thing promoted off the ground, because with you traveling all over, man, I want you to make sure you let everybody know what we're doing.
With that, I promise the funk. I promise to keep the funk.
Yes, great.
Really, I think it's one of the best things that could happen for any and everybody funk related. And I really mean that. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all of that stuff is appropriate for a lot of things. But for the artists that made funk music, and Dayton just happens to be bubbling over with that. I mean, because I've worked with Roger Troutman. I recorded Dance Floor and Heartbreaker and all of that stuff right here in Dayton with Roger and Zap.
Slow down then.
I had to get some of this now.
I know you come to the Funk City.
Oh yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that. Then.
Well, truthfully, the first recording that was done with Roger and them was the More Bounce to the Ounce. We did that up in Detroit, Michigan. I was there when the concept was actually being put together. Roger was already doing his thing on guitar. Bootsy did guitar, the rhythm on More Bounce to the Ounce, which was showing like the structure, the format. Roger was already using the talk box, but George talked him into using it probably more than what he had anticipated. So the formula was constructed in Detroit. The formula was constructed in Detroit at United Sound. But Lord knows, when they got the formula,
it took off.
They took off,
Yes.
and they did it, and they still do it. So, and upon our meeting like that, Roger and them, they saw what we was already doing too, with Parliament-Funkadelic sessions and everything, Bootsy's Rubber Band. I was welcomed to do recording sessions with Roger and Zap. As a matter of fact, it had been offered to me a couple of times to become a part of the entity in itself. But I was so caught up in Bootsy and Funkadelic and Parliament, so whenever chance I had to work with them, I did that. So I was here to do Dance Floor. I was here to do Heartbreaker and stuff like that. I did a little background recording on a group that he had called the New Horizons.
Oh yeah. We had the opportunity of interviewing a couple of original members of New Horizon months ago.
Right.
And those guys right now are out still doing their thing. And
Yes.
that's I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
But man, knowing that you kind of got into the Dayton scene, that's great,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, you can't get around it. I mean, plus we're close friends and relation with Sugarfoot and all of those guys. I mean, Bootsy and even when I first got with Bootsy, he always talked about the Ohio players.
Oh, yeah.
He loved Marshall and the whole thing, that charisma that they had and the unique style. So I mean, and even before we started Rubber Band, I heard about Roger Troutman before I had even saw him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Bootsy had talked about, yeah, man, this guy named Roger. So it was already, it was already in the air. And eventually we took a good breath, and there it was.
yeah, Roger with Roger's Human Body first, man, and then working on up and getting the Zap group together. I tell you, I miss the man.
Yes, sir.
Every day. When
Yes,
I'm on
sir.
it. But we keep that legacy alive, man, because
that's right.
It's not a day that I don't play some Roger, Zap, and now, man, with the Bootsy's Rubber Band, y'all had so many funk tunes, man. Can you give me a little information on that, on maybe who wrote some of the songs, what songs that you felt was that is still the test of time?
Well, like we had the Pinocchio theory, that R-U-B-B-E-R,
yes,
F-A-N-S, rubber fans,
yeah,
and funk with you. I want to funk with you. Bip, 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 bip. I mean, that initial groove came off of Razor Sharp, our keyboard player named Joel Johnson. We call him Razor Sharp Johnson. Basically, that was his keyboard feel, and you drop you play anything that's near funk. Bootsy he got something for you. Okay, so after it was all put together, and then myself, with the vocal melodies and stuff, those things. They were just common to the denominator in itself, falling into the groove. Like when we did, like originally Flashlight, for example, that was original Rubber Band track that ended up going to Parliament. Aqua Boogie was a Rubber Band track that we did with Parliament. So, there was a lot of things that we was initiating. As a matter of fact, you got me thinking now, Stan.
No, keep on going. Keep on going, man. I love this.
The first album, like I said, I did with Parliament was Chocolate City, but in that record, we had before we got with George, Bootsy and I had did 4 demos, and one of the songs, other than Rather Be With You, we called it Together in Heaven. And George Clinton heard that with the other demos, and they put that out on the Chocolate City album out as Together. So, there was always, either the thing of me collaborating or co-writing vocals or melody or something like that. I've always been tied in to all of those elements. Later on down the line, I would be encouraged by George to, even do co-production stuff for some of the other acts like the Brides of Funkenstein or Paulette. I would do songwriting with them along with a guy named Ron Dunbar who used to be from Motown staff, So, like I said, my thing pretty much has been a singer, but I do write, I have written, I still write. The drums, again, if it hadn't been for George Clinton, I would have never touched them, I mean, I brought Dennis Chambers into the business.
Okay.
The drummer Dennis Chambers, I literally brought him into the business, and the bass player named Rodney Skeet Curtis, who ended up playing for Parliament-Funkadelic and been out for years now with Maceo Parker, as bassist. So, yeah, it's like once you get started, funk takes you everywhere.
Well, when you bring up Maceo, my goodness.
Yes,
man,
sir.
Tell me a little bit more about that, man. You know what? It is just something when you play an instrument. and you hear it on radio, and you automatically know who it is.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's
that,
right.
That tells you something right there.
That's right. Signature. We say signature sound.
Signature sound.
Yeah.
And he had that.
That's right. Well, you know, as the rubber band, you know, we started initially with the rhythm section, and then came Maceo came in. Basically, Bootsy's rubber band. This is the real truth. Bootsy's rubber band was like 80% of the JBs, because Bootsy, Catfish Collins, Frankie, those three had already played with James Brown, Sex Machine, and all of that stuff. Then we brought in then was Maceo, Fred Wesley, and Richard Cush Griffin on trumpet, who's the lead trumpet player on Ain't It Funky Now. This is Cush Griffin. So the three out of the four horns, because the second trumpet player, his name was Rick Gardner, he came from a group called Chase. But like I said, 80% of Bootsy's rubber band was literally the JBs. Then the other percentage was made up of myself, Joel Razor Sharp Johnson, both of us from Baltimore. The other singer that I brought into the rubber band, Robert Peanut Johnson, who's from Baltimore. And then Rick Gardner, the trumpet player, as I said, that came in from a group called Chase. And Chase was a like a 4-trumpet group that was really doing heavy horn stuff prior to like Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago and that kind of stuff. And their band, unfortunately, ended up in a plane crash. And Rick was the only one that didn't make the flight, so he ended up with us, you know. And like I said, the rubber band was basically 80% the JBs. So Maceo was there, and Fred Wesley was there, and you know, Cush was there, and of course Fred Wesley and Maceo was doing a bunch of our horn arrangements, not only for rubber band, but for Parliament-Funkadelic as well, you know.
Well, when we talk about you now living overseas there in Paris, are you doing anything over there?
Wow. Okay, I moved to Paris in '96. The first thing that I had the privilege of doing, I met a drummer from Nigeria. There's an African musician named Fela Kuti, and Fela Kuti is like he's like the African James Brown. As a matter of fact, James Brown and Bootsy and them saw Fela Kuti, and they both were blown away with each other.
Wow.
When we did Stretching Out, the rhythm that's in Stretching Out, I don't know if anybody has paid attention to the different rhythm structures of some of the rubber band songs in the first album called Stretching Out and the Rubber Band. Stretching Out is different from all of them. And Bootsy told me himself that Stretching Out was birthed from their experience of being in Africa, seeing and hearing this guy, Fela Kuti, and traveling through like villages, and in the distance you could hear this boom, 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 boom. So between that, he came back, and that was the pulse that he used from dun ding dun 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 boom, bing, boom, dun boom, bing, dun. So it's all the African thing, and. In '96, when I moved to Paris, I had this concept in my mind about, you know, African and funk. I said, man, what if you take funk and put it with the African stuff? I was calling it funky juju. And a guy in Paris said, man, well, let me introduce you to this drummer. So I met this drummer named Tony Allen, that was the drummer for Fela Kuti. And we started recording. I recorded tons of tracks of just bass and drums, him and a bass player from the Ivory Coast. That was a great experience. I did cartoons. I did music for cartoons over in Paris, France, for a TV series called Funky Cops. It was a cartoon series called Funky Cops. I did that in 2000, well, the tail end of 1999 into New Year's Day. I did the Champs-Élysées for over 1 million attendance with a French band, that really wanted me to, you know, appear with them, because they was like, wow, you know, the funk, we can have a part of the funk in our program. I went on to do recordings with a few groups in Paris, quite a few major labels and stuff like that. And then from Paris, I was picked up by guitarist and producer named Dave Stewart. He comes from the group called the Eurythmics. They made this song, Sweet Dreams Are Made of These. Well, Dave Stewart is the guitarist, and Annie Lennox, she was the vocalist out front. I met Dave Stewart from collaborating on a song with Bootsy for him, and I went from Paris over to London. I lived in London for 2 years, working on music and tracks with him that ended up putting me in doing movie soundtracks. I did movie soundtrack with Dave Stewart and Mick Jagger for the film called Alfie, which won a major, and went to South Africa for Nelson Mandela. Went to South Africa for Nelson Mandela to do raise money for the fight against AIDS in South Africa. So, you know, Paris gave me a lot. Paris itself gave me some opportunity and gave me some offshoots as well. And they love the funk over in Europe. I say Paris, but I say in Europe as well, because I work all, you know, through Germany, Switzerland, and all the places. So, yeah.
Well, I tell you, here in Dayton, Ohio, where we're trying our best and working hard to make sure that this funk museum gets off the ground. We couldn't do it without you and the groups that you have played with. I just want to let you know that. The thing is that when we get an opportunity to interview artists like you, we always want you to just go ahead on and tell us your input on what do you think about it. Do you have any do you have any of those old Bootsy Collins type uniforms or anything like that we can get into that museum?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. As I mentioned to David, who again, I'm very happy, you know, that he's pursuing this as well. You know, I just think it's one of the greatest things that could happen for funk and the funk artists and everything. I told him there's no doubt. I probably have a complete suit that was done in leather, handmade. It's in Paris, so I will make that contribution.
Man,
yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'm gonna give you the real thing that's been seen in videos and everything. So there's no, and with pleasure too. But I'll be doing my best to toot the horn about the Funk Music Hall of Fame. And it's funny because I've already had friends of mine from Europe already ready to come. They want to walk through facilities and everything, you know. So it's a great thing, because I'm positively sure that people will be coming from various places around the world, not just the United States. I'm positively sure people will be coming in from Asia, Japan, and a lot, because they're crazy about the funk. I mean, I've been in Japan a lot of times, and China and all of this stuff, and you'd be surprised how people that don't even speak your language, they're just overwhelmed, they're mesmerized by this music.
Well, I tell you what, man, I thank you. I really do. You know, I love to interview people who knows this stuff, and it makes my job a lot easier to sit here with a professional like you and be able to just inform us of all the funk that you have brought us. And again, Gary Mudbone Cooper, I want to thank you, sir.
And I thank you too, sir.
I really appreciate
my
this.
Pleasure.
And again, you know, keep the funk alive.
Yes,
you
sir.
Understand what I'm saying?
Y'all keep it on the one, y'all. Y'all know what y'all got to do up in here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Hey, this is Stan the Man Brooks, host of Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles. Until next time, we both gonna keep it funky. Yeah.